Do you ever wonder what's really going on in government, locally, in the state of Tennessee, and across the country? I'm Tennessee State Senator Bo Watson, and on Tennessee Today, we dive into the issues that shape our communities, from local policy to national debates. Each episode, I break down key topics and issues, share my perspective from over 20 years in the Tennessee legislature, and talk with guests about the decisions that impact your daily life. I hope you enjoy these honest conversations and that they help you stay informed and engaged. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Tennessee Today wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Hey folks, this is Tennessee State Senator Bo Watson. Today on my podcast, Tennessee Today, I had a really great guest, Randy Boyd, who is the president of the University of Tennessee System. And we talked about an array of topics, but really we focused in on talking about how higher education in the state of Tennessee is incredibly affordable and of the highest quality. We also talked about the university system's relationship to Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which will pay huge dividends in scientific development around the world, really, in the future. I hope you'll take time and listen to the podcast. It's a really, really good one. President Boyd, welcome to Tennessee Today. This is going to be a really fun conversation. I hope you'll really lean in and have a good time in the process.
I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if I should address you as chairman, as senator, or Bo in this particular show.
Well,
what would you prefer?
On this show, His Excellency is what he prefers.
Well, that's what most people call you.
Yes.
But, no, that's not it either, but we're not going to talk about that on the air.
So just so people don't get confused, because they often do, the president of the UT system is responsible for all of the UT campuses and not just the campus that happens to be in Knoxville.
That's right. And I have to love all my children equally. And so I spend as much time, if not more time, at Chattanooga, at Martin, at Southern, at the Health Science Center as I do at Knoxville, even though our offices are in Knoxville. But as the president, we're responsible for all 5 campuses. We have a chancellor for each one. And I'm responsible for Oak Ridge National Labs. So Oak Ridge National Labs for the last 25 years has been managed by UT-Battelle. And so it's a partnership with Battelle. And every 2 years, the president of Battelle or the president of the system gets to be the chairman. So right now I can pretend that I'm in charge and I get to be the chairman of Oak Ridge National Labs through the UT-Battelle partnership.
That's really cool. Now, we'll get into some...
Can I add something? Because I know everybody will watch this podcast, and many people
hugely popular.
I know, and it'll be some of my friends at the Institute of Public Service will be watching it, and they'll just notice that I left them out. So we also have the Institute of Public Service that has something called MTAS, which helps provide service to cities, CTAS that provides service to counties, 8 different directorates that help public government and organizations all across the state. So really important part of the UT mission as well.
It is really important, and we'll get into talking about higher ed policy and all that kind of stuff. But to MTAS and CTAS, a lot of local governments don't have the resources to do some of the research, both legal as well as just operational. And so the state long ago set up these organizations to be research advisory arms for local governments, and virtually every county government and every municipal government has a relationship. It varies depending upon the size and the resources that the government has. But yeah, that's a really important part. The other thing that comes out of the University of Tennessee on the Knoxville campus is, and we're getting ready to do this on Monday, so the state's funding board, which determines what the state budget is, one of the economic reviews that's done for the funding board, it comes out of the out of UT's economics program up there. So the University of Tennessee system plays a real important part all across the state of Tennessee, as do all our higher education facilities.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So you have a really interesting background. To kind of help the podcast listeners learn a little bit about you before we kind of get into talking about higher education policy in Tennessee. How did you get to this point? Because you're a UT alum.
That's a very very indirect story. So I'll try to do this in 60 seconds or less because I know
Take
we
your
want to
time.
talk about other things. But so as you know, a businessman, not a academic, started my first company at age 23. Graduated from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, at age 19. Not because I'm smart, but because I'm cheap. I had to pay my way through, and it was just cheaper to graduate early.
And your degree was in
industrial management.
Industrial management.
I went to work for my dad for 4 years until I realized what most young men realized. My dad wasn't very smart and he was underpaying me. So I started my own company. And that's not really totally true. But I thought I had a better idea. I could make my own fortune on my own. 6 months later, the first business failed. Always encourage young people to get that first failure out of the way early because you learn more from your failures.
Now, what was it? What was the business? What were you doing?
So the first product was a storm alert. It was a barometer alarm device that would tell you if there was a tornado in the area. The problem that people think is that when these sirens go off, that's all the warning that they need. But the sirens go off after the tornadoes hit. The average tornado is on the ground for less than 30 seconds. So basically all you're finding out is that some of your neighbors have been wiped out or you're listening to it on the ground. This would actually give you a minute or a couple of minutes advance notice based on the drop in the barometric pressure. And it'll retail for $24.95. Beautiful spun brass barometer. You can tell I'm still committed to what a great product this was. But I was the only one. I could sell them to stores all day long. I covered every store or Western Auto and hardware store and drugstore throughout the Midwest. If they had a tornado or within 100 miles of one, I was in their town and sold them buy 6, get 1 free, buy 12, get 2 free, and get put on my commercial at midnight. Didn't tell them it was at midnight. But anyway, after about a year of that, selling to all these stores, nobody ever reordered because consumers just didn't walk in a store and say, hey, what do you have for early warning of tornadoes? So I learned a valuable lesson. It's much better to create a product where there's already demand than try to create demand. So that was a good lesson. But started a company called Seiko Distributing, selling electric fencing for cattle and horses, selling products out of the back of a Dodge Maxi van with no air and no radio. I didn't have air conditioning because it used up too much gas, and there's a theme here. I'm cheap. I didn't want to waste money on just keeping me comfortable. But I didn't have a radio on purpose because I wanted to make sure I was listening to my customers. After about 6 years of that, my customers started asking me for this product called the Invisible Fence. The company wouldn't sell to me, bet everything I owned, which wasn't much. According to my balance sheet, I was worth $26,000, but I met an engineer. I had no idea where the cash was, but that's what it said I was worth. I met this engineer that for $30,000 could design my version of this product. And it turned out to be a big success. Over the years, we kept inventing new products, acquiring other companies. And by 2020, when I sold the company, we had 4,000 products, 1,400 employees, doing $650 million in sales with offices in 6 countries around the world. And our mission was to make the world a better place for pets. Along the way, I realized at some point that, I'm really just working to give to charity or to my kids because I'm good. I've got everything I need. And so started dedicating more of my resources and more of my time to giving back. Started something called Tennessee Achieves that you're very familiar with that provides young people the opportunity to go to technical college and community college free of tuition and fees. It was all supported through private donors until 2013. And then 2013, Governor Haslam asked me to come and help him in higher education. We created something called the Drive to 55. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, through the support of you and the General Assembly and the governor, we were able to create what we call the Tennessee Promise, which now makes it possible for every student in the state of Tennessee to go to technical and community college for free forever. And it doesn't cost the taxpayers a penny.
So I'm going to let you take a breath here and just ask you, so where does your you obviously are deeply philanthropic, incredibly kind. Where does that come from? You made the statement of, I'm working to give to charity and give stuff away. Where does something like that come from?
I don't know if I could trace it exactly. I will say one thing that was really important in my childhood was being a part of Boy Scouts. And then later on, I was a Boy Scout master for 17 years. And in Scouts, there was the slogan, do a good turn daily, the motto, the oath, be prepared. But there's also something called the Code of the Outdoors, which says, leave every place better than you found it. For 17 years as a Scoutmaster, I would teach the boys that this is literally true. If we're on a trail, it doesn't matter if it's your gum wrapper or not, pick it up. We're going to leave every place better than we found it. But it was also a metaphor for life. Everywhere we go in life, make sure you leave it better than you found it. And if you preach it, you need to live it. And so that was a part of it. And then the other part is just simply that Jenny and I grew up in Knoxville. Her father was a school teacher. My dad had a business that did okay, but mostly was struggling. When I left him, it was chapter 11. But we did okay, but we felt like so much was poured into us. Our public schools, we had great public school teachers that cared about us and gave so much to us. I had so many mentors along the way. The community, the employees, so many people helped us be successful. And I firmly believe, and I'm working on this, but I firmly believe that if I spend the rest of my life giving back, I'll still die in debt. There's technically no way I could ever pay back everything that I've been given. And so you want to make a difference, and that's what drives us. Making a difference, make the world a little better place. And it's not about recognition. It's about just having that satisfaction that your life mattered.
Yeah, that's awesome. We could almost stop the whole thing, the podcast here, and just send that message, because we don't live in a world today where that's a popular thing. People want to talk about it, but doing it as you've been doing it is much more difficult than most people want to admit.
We've been blessed. We're just fortunate to be in a position that we're able to do it.
Yeah, I think Scripture is something blessed to be a blessing. So thank you for that. Now, back to your story. So you become the Commissioner of Economic and Community Development. That's probably where we first met each other.
So.
Was in.
Can I share? I want to maybe put a little exclamation mark on that 1 year working for Governor Hasselman as a special advisor on higher education. When he first reached out to me, he actually offered me a job in higher education, and I said, "No, I'm a business guy. Government's too slow. It's too bureaucratic. No way I'm going to do this. But I'll volunteer for a year, and we can see what we can get done." And that was a transformative year in my life. That was the year I realized, if you really want to make a difference in the world, being a businessman, creating jobs, doing some philanthropic works through your company is good. As a philanthropist, you can give a certain amount of money away and give your time. But if you really want to change the world, even though it is going to be bureaucratic and it is going to be slow, public service is the place you can make the biggest difference for the most people, and that's why you do what you do. Nobody is as a state senator for the money or for the applause and the recognition. It's because you can make a difference. So what you knew, what I learned, was that this is a calling, and so I think that was the year that I had to pivot in my life. I still would run my company for another 5 years, but I was more and more dedicating all of my time to public service. Then I became Commissioner of Economic and Community Development. Governor said, "Great that all these kids get educations to get jobs, but where are the jobs? Come back and help us get some jobs." And so we had a great run in that. You want me to stop there or just finish up?
No, you're doing great.
Okay,
I'll interrupt you along the way when I feel like we need to stop.
Please do.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to be as brief as possible.
Take your time, because I think, it is important for people to know, how people get to a certain place, right? And that may not be the place that they end, but how did they get there? And that there are so many unique ways. Like a couple of podcasts ago, we had Holly Kirby, who's the retiring Chief Justice of the Tennessee Supreme Court, and how she was a mechanical engineer and ended up going to law school, even though in the back of her head she always wanted to be a lawyer. So I think it's interesting when people hear the unique ways that people end up where they are, because particularly for students, and we'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about higher education policy, but students go in and they major in something, and I guess the assumption is, well, that's what I'm going to end up doing for the rest of my life. And from the data that that's not what happens. Students get a degree in something, and then they end up doing something completely different, and they end up being, they're an industrial engineer when they graduate, and they figure, well, I'm going to spend my whole life organizing things around industry, and then the next thing you know, you talk to them, and they're like, yeah, he's the president of the UT system. And you're like, well, how does an industrial engineer get to be president of the UT system? So I think it's really fascinating for people to hear those.
When I do a commencement address, if I get the long version, I get 3 stories. And the second one is about serendipity, believing in serendipity. The best things in life are those things that weren't part of your plan. You need to have a plan. It's great to have a plan, but always be open for opportunities, because some of the best things in life are things that you never had planned for. And I never had planned to be the president of the University of Tennessee, but it's probably the best opportunity to make a difference that I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I had a wrestling coach who his mantra was, the harder you work, the luckier you get. That luck doesn't come your way, you make your luck. And so if you work really hard, you do a lot of things well, then luck just kind of follows you. So you're ECD, or Commissioner of Economic Community Development. You make a run for governor in a crowded field.
It wasn't too crowded. There's 4 of us.
Well, 4 people in an election is,
that's a lot.
and a primary. is a lot.
Well, I don't want to say there's 3 too many.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a great experience. I think if you have any listeners out there and you could say more about this, the difference in you and I, you've actually won an election. I've never won an election, so we have different perspectives on it. But I think if people always ask me, "Do you have any regrets?" And first off, I never really wanted the job, and I used to say that when I first ran. I said, "This isn't about becoming governor; it's about completing the mission." We had the Drive to 55. We had the governor's rural task force, which I was chairman of, helping our rural communities. And I was just worried that in the last 2 years of this last governor's administration, we weren't going to get it done. I thought, well, I could take 2 years off, take a chance, and add another 8 years on to the mission. And so I started off the campaign saying, it's not about being governor, it's about completing the mission. Until my campaign manager, who, came up to me and said, stop saying that. You got to say you want the job. But, the truth is, it wasn't really about the job. So the minute I knew I was going to lose, I said, okay, now what are we going to do? Now what other ways can we accomplish the same things without being governor? And I had a whole list of things. But fortunately, a week after I lost the election, my predecessor in this job called me and asked me, hey, would you like to get together for lunch? And I disingenuously said, sure, I'll get together right away. And because usually when somebody asks me, being the commissioner or running for governor, it takes like months to get on my calendar. So I call my assistant and say, hey, can you see if I can get scheduled with Joe DiPietro sometime? And she says, you can see him tomorrow. You got nothing on your calendar. Nobody wants to see you. So,
yeah. Nobody will answer your phone. Nobody will call you back. Yeah, I know the feeling.
We met, and at the end of the lunch, he says, by the way, I'm going to retire in a couple of months, and I've been talking with the governor and my chairman. They thought you'd be a great interim. If you could do it for like 6 months until we can find somebody qualified to do the job, would you be willing to do it? And we're not going to pay you, by the way, but we'd be glad for you to do it. So I called my former boss, the governor, Bill Haslam, and say, look, I'll do this just like I did as special advisor on higher education. I'll come in, but you got to let me be transformative. If you want somebody just to put their feet up on the desk, pick somebody else. He said, no, you can have full reign, do what you want. And in those first 6 months, we got some big things done. We created something called the UT Promise that today has been evolving. Today it says that if you make under $75,000, you can come to any of the UT campuses free of tuition and fees. 2/3 of all citizens can now go to UT free of tuition and fees. And there's some other things, but I found really quickly that if you want
to come all these great things like this happen after I've already left school, right? I mean, you got Tennessee Promise, you got Education Freedom Scholarships, you got all this great stuff. No,
you're thinking about it the wrong way. All these big things are happening because you got a great education, and now you're funding higher education at a level at which allows us to be able to do these great things.
I like your narrative.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I like your narrative. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's the end of the story. Just I love being at the University of Tennessee. I get to serve my alma mater and my state, and I don't feel if you want to make a difference in the lives of Tennesseans, there's no better place than being at the University of Tennessee.
That's going to kind of draw us into the conversation about higher ed. That's a really good point, because when we made the decision to name you I think initially the interim president at UT, there was this ripple of undercurrent of, well, wait a minute, he's not an academic. He doesn't qualify to be a university president, because if you look at university presidents historically, they have this long academic track behind them, and you didn't. And I remember within the body of the legislature, it was like, hey, we really like this. We like the fact that there's somebody who's not an academic that's going to get engaged in the world of academics, because there's so much that we felt like needs to be fixed within academia. So it wasn't without, I won't say controversy, but it wasn't without some pushback from the academic world saying, who's this guy coming in he's an industrial engineer, he's not an academic, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. I think in my very first mistake was on my very first day when I got elected, and it wasn't even my first day. I was just elected and going to be president a couple of months into the future, and there were 7 people that showed up representing 10 different alliances, all of which had one member. But anyway, one person said something to the effect that you don't know anything about academics. How can you run this organization? And I made the mistake of equating higher education to a business and my business. So I said, well, I ran a company for nearly 30 years, and we create all kinds of amazing products, very technical products. I've got a whole army of engineers that design these products. I'm not an engineer. I can't design them, but I can lead the company. So I can't teach class. I can't be an academic. I can't do the research, but I think I could run the organization. And the next day, op-ed by one of the professors in the room said, "Dear President Boyd, university is like a church. It's not like a business." But the truth is, and I found, it's much more like a business. I mean, you do have to balance the budget. If you want to be able to give the raises and provide the facilities and all the other things, you have to run it like a business. Now, it takes both. Obviously, you can't have a university with just a bunch of business people, but at least in my position, I feel like the things I've done in my past probably better position me to run a $3.5 billion organization than maybe if I had gone up through the ranks. So typically going through academia, you're a professor and you do a good job, you become a department head, then you become a dean, then maybe you become provost, and then you become president. Through none of that are you really leading a large organization. You don't really need to know anything about the state in which you're serving. You don't need to have any government relations background. And you don't need to have any fundraising background. And those are really important parts of the job. So we divide and conquer.
Yep.
I've got academics I've got great chancellors. They all came from academia. I've got a great provost and great faculty. And they do their job. And then my job is to give them support.
Well, I think that's why when your name emerged that the legislature was excited about that, because we were like, yeah, this is breaking the normal kind of mold and actually will be good for our system to have an injection of a different way of thinking about higher education. So in your time now, you've been president for how long now?
It'll be 7 years, November 26th.
7 years. Wow. God, time flies, doesn't
It
it,
is.
when you're having fun? What have you, from a higher education perspective, what perception did you have going in that has now changed?
I'll say the biggest one, and it's the most positive one, is just how much of an impact the University of Tennessee has in so many ways across the state. Every single day, literally every single day, I find another way in which we're making a difference. I was at UT-Martin just yesterday, and I met with a group of professors that are leading the Center for Rural Innovation. And one of the things they do is they take and they're partnering with Martin, UT Southern, and UT Chattanooga, and collectively they'll have about 22 students next year that are part of their public policy or political science degree. They go off and get a certificate by doing 6 hours worth of credit by doing internships in small towns throughout Tennessee. And we've got 400 and something small cities across the state. As we talked about earlier, there's many of them that have almost no resources, and to be able to loan them a young person that's very talented in analytics or law or agriculture or planning for 3 months to help them out, it's a great opportunity for the students to get great knowledge, hopefully to maybe to fall in love with the idea of giving back to small towns, and the small towns benefit. But I just learned about that yesterday. Basically, every single day I find a way in which the university is doing things across the state, big and small, to make an impact. So that was the most positive thing. The thing that I talk about a lot, I'll make it very brief, but the biggest difference is in running a business versus running a university is the time it takes to persuade everybody on a new idea. So like if it was a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a Army captain and you're I wasn't an Army captain, I wasn't in war, but I would imagine, if you tell your troops in the middle of battle to take a hill, you don't really have a committee and talk about it.
Right.
Is it really that hill, or do we want that hill?
We like that hill over
can
there.
I do it tomorrow? It's not really not feeling it today. You just do it or die. So that's like a 1. You don't persuade. In a company, it's like a 3 or 4, because at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't decide they want to go with you, you can just let them go. Well, you can't just arbitrarily tell them, because people have to buy into your mission. They got to want to do it, or they're just not going to do it very effectively. If in government, we just got to get 5.1. We just got 51% of the people to go along. But in a university, it's got to be like an 8 or a 9, because you got so many different stakeholders. I've got the legislature and the governor, so the state's got to support it. The faculty have to support it. The students have to support it. The alumni have to support it. So there's so many different stakeholders, and if you ignore one of them in a particular initiative and just rush off without consulting one and getting them on board, you'll regret it. So things can get done. It just takes a little bit longer because you got to bring so many more people on board.
Yeah, let's talk about you have been addressing this for a number of years now, but if you take away issues kind of thing from higher education, probably the number one topic that comes up about higher education is how expensive it is.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I want to counter that. But you go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that that's a relative term, because if you go to higher ed in the state of Tennessee, it's probably one of the least expensive higher education experiences that a student can have. And with all the different ways we've tried to reduce those costs, even less expensive. Some instances, the cost of higher education and it being expensive is based on the decisions that students and their families have made about where they're choosing to get their higher education.
Right.
So there are a lot of factors that go into it. But in general, the conversation nationally is, how do we, like healthcare, how do we control the cost of higher education so that it is affordable and available to everyone? Obviously, you've done a lot around that with and the state of Tennessee has tried to do a lot about that. But amongst your peers from other states and stuff, what's the conversation around the cost of higher education?
Well, it's ironic that you would bring that up because I just left Dallas 2 days ago. I was there for 2 days with presidents of 60 different universities from around the country. And I got up and kind of, I wouldn't say lectured, but made the point that we within that room were doing exactly what we were frustrated about when other pundits and politicians and media people conflate higher education. Basically, when they talk about higher education, like one of my favorite guys is, I won't use his name on your show, but on Bloomberg every morning, he's just constantly talking about like New York University, $80,000 a year to go there for tuition and fees alone, and you graduate with a couple $100,000 of debt. And he says that, and this is what everybody does, they pick a really extreme example like that, and then well, that's higher education for you. No, that's at one university. We are so different. Ivy League, elite liberal arts school in Northeast Tennessee or Northeastern United States versus, say, Western Governors that does everything online versus a technical college that's teaching welding versus a public land-grant university at the University of Tennessee. We are all worlds apart. So you can't really lump all higher education together. Two things.
Well, that goes to my point. That goes to my point, and I'll let you get to your two things. That goes to my point of the choices that students and their families make. And when you look at, two schools and you go, well, we want to go to this school, and you're like, well, that's going to be $80,000 a year versus, and they still make the choice to go that, recognizing that you're going to, or maybe not recognizing, you're going to leave there with a lot of debt. So, go ahead.
And I'm going to just add on to that. The choices they make, where they're going to go, and then what they're going to major in. Not all degrees are they provide the same return on investment. So it makes a big difference in what you decide to choose. But I guess the two things: one, being in the state of Tennessee, we are blessed again to have a state legislature and a governor for decades, really, that have believed in have a surplus of funding. We usually run it at the state well, so we have extra money to invest and highly value higher education. And so a lot of that extra funding goes into higher education. So that's one thing. The second thing, at the University of Tennessee, I'll just brag about our university, but we are, and I think other public land-grant universities would be similar, but we are hyper-focused on making sure that we're providing great value and great opportunity for more students. So we mentioned the UT promise. 2/3 of all Tennesseans can come free of tuition and fees. Over the last 5 years, our average tuition has increased by 0.8%. Think about inflation for that period of time, 4 or 5% on average. So if you think about it relatively, we're less expensive today than we were just 5 years ago. And here's the other part when people talk about debt. So true there, especially this is more true with graduate students, but with undergraduate students, and at the University of Tennessee, 2 years ago, 47% of our students graduated with no debt. And the ones that did have debt, it was $26,000. We just got new information just a couple of weeks ago. This past year, 54% of all the students that graduated from any of our UT campuses graduated with zero debt. And of those that did graduate with debt, is down 6% to $23,000. We just set our 2030 goals. Our goals is to get that up to 65% of our students graduating with no debt by 2030, and of those that graduate with debt, it'll be down to 20,000 by 2030. So we're bucking the trend. We're making it less expensive, and that's our mission. We're the land-grant university. Everybody's got a different mission. Some universities, they're an elite university. They want to get the smartest kids from the richest families and send them off to the world to do certain things. We are here to provide the most opportunity for the most Tennesseans that we possibly can, and provide a workforce that our state needs, and that's just different. And so we're trying to grow. I meet presidents all the time that say, other universities in other states say, we're at whatever 5,000, 7,000 students, 23,000. I met a president the other day that said they're at 23,000, and they're not planning on growing ever from that. I think, well, but for us, I've got parents and students all across the state desperate to get into UT, wanting a better education. I feel like we owe it to them to provide as much opportunity as possible. At the same time, as you know, there are employers all across the state, school systems that desperately need teachers, hospitals that desperately need nurses. And how can I say, I'm sorry, we're good. We don't need to produce any more talent. We desperately need to produce the talent for the workforce. So those are our two stakeholders that are encouraging us to continue to grow. And to do that, we need to do it in a responsible way, great education, and at the least possible price.
How does a juggernaut like the University of Tennessee system, and I know when you say UT, you're talking about all the campuses that make up UT, and that often gets confused with people. But how does the juggernaut that is the UT system that you've created, what's your relationship with our other public institutions like the University of Memphis, Austin Peay?
I think this is also, from what I can gather, somewhat unique about the state of Tennessee. We all get along. We all collaborate. We're all working together. A couple of years ago, thanks to the General Assembly, we got a fund to do a new enterprise resource planning system, an ERP system, and we got it all together. And UT went first, then ETSU and Tennessee Tech, but we're all working on the same platform together. We're constantly collaborating, and every now and then we compete for recruiting students, and that's a small part of what we do. After we get the students, we're all working together to make sure those students are successful. So we're comparing notes about that. We're working with the state legislature on maybe new policies that can benefit the university. We're working on lots of things together. And so we have a really good relationship, what we call the LGIs, or locally governed institutions, and the UT system. And I should also say, and with TBR, Tennessee Board of Regents. We have lots of partnerships.
Which governs our community colleges and our TCATs and that kind of stuff.
Like at UT Martin, we're in the process of building something called the Test Hub, a new workshop that we'll share. It'll be on the UT Martin campus, but the local community college and the local technical school all share the same space. And so we've got lots of pathways between the community colleges, and their students want to come and get a 4-year degree after they get their associate's degree, and we want them to come. So we work really closely to make sure they make that path, that transition as seamless as possible.
That's and that we recognize that. And of course, what we're trying to do from a legislator's perspective is create the most opportunity and the most choice that we can provide for students. And if UT Chattanooga, which is the flagship university as an alum, and we're having the investiture of our new chancellor, Lori Bruce, who has been on this show.
I will be putting on a tie and wiping the mud off my shoes before I go there in about 2 hours.
I will as well, and I'm looking forward to that. But I mean, we are trying in Tennessee to create as much educational choice as we can for the people that we represent, from K-12 all the way through higher education. And one of the things that we've been working on that I know you're very familiar with is the way that a student can go through our K-12 system, and then maybe they're not quite ready yet for a 4-year institution like at one of the University of Tennessee system schools, and they go to one of our Board of Regents schools like Chattanooga. Here locally, it'd be Chattanooga State. But then they get in there and they realize, actually, I'm a better student than I thought I was. And we're trying to build and continue to work on building these bridges that allow the student to take that time earned and convert it over to their 4-year experience. And when I was first elected back in 2004, that did not exist. It was easier to get a student from Chattanooga State into Austin Peay. And of course, they were Board of Regents schools, but it was easier to get them into Austin Peay than it was to get them into UT Chattanooga when I first got elected, because we didn't have these bridges. And when they did leave Chattanooga State to go to UTC, they lost all their credits. So they had 2 years worth of time and energy invested, and then only to start over and take English 101 all over again. We've been really working hard to try and eliminate those bridges, and we think that helps contribute to the university system by, one, those students tend to do well when they get there because they've realized I can actually do this work. The other thing that we did, and we may have done this when you were in government with us, we said we're not going to pay you anymore for the people that you have sitting in your seats. We're going to pay you for your outcomes. How many students are you graduating? And I think that was a transformational moment for Tennessee. And a lot of states have looked at that and said, wow, we wish we could do that, because now we hold you accountable, your campus is accountable for not just getting kids in, but really getting kids or students out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that actually did pass in 2010 before I got there.
Okay.
But it was the performance funding formula. Thank you for supporting that, because it's been we've been a pioneer in higher education funding across the country, as you said, and states all across the country have been coming and trying to model what we're doing, and it's working. Our retention rates, our graduation rates for all of our schools over the last 15 years continue to go up. And I would like to think that we know what our mission is, and we would be focused on student success anyway, but it's always better if the financial incentives line up with that mission, and they do in the state.
Yeah, well, one of the challenges is Chairman of Finance. One of the challenges is every target we put out there, our schools hit it and exceed it. And when you incentivize that financially, then you got to come back and go, well, darn, I was hoping they weren't going to make that, and I got to figure out how to pay for it, right? So, obviously you're doing a great job at UT. I do want to talk a little bit about how UT and other systems, how they fit into our economic development of the state at large. First, I want to touch on just Chattanooga and your view of Chattanooga and how it plugs into our local business and industrial community. And then I'm going to pivot back around and we'll talk a little about nuclear, because that's an Oak Ridge National Lab, because that's become a real emphasis at the state saying. So when you're here visiting in Chattanooga, how do you see Chattanooga UTC plugging into our local business community?
We should be hand in glove with the local business community and the local government as well. So we're going to be producing teachers for our school system. We're working closely with utilities like EPB. In fact, David Waite, who's currently the CEO of EPB, is coming to. He was now on the board of trustees at UT, the system. So we work with them on a quantum research project that we've been doing together. So there's a research component. We do research with Volkswagen. We do research with Denso from UT Chattanooga. But then also there's the talent the talent pipeline. All those people I just mentioned are desperate for the talent that we're producing in engineering and computer science and in so many fields. And so we provide them with the talent. We partner with them on the research. We help them be successful in the community. So it's our responsibility, again, as the land-grant university, to support the community. And there's a big effort to do that. I'm really excited about our new chancellor, Lori Bruce. She gets that, and I haven't been. Every time I come to Chattanooga, which is about every week or two, I'll bump into people and I'll say, "Oh, you need to meet Lori Bruce, our new chancellor." "Oh, yeah, we've already met her. We love her. She's wonderful. She's been everywhere in just the last 4 months." So I think we got the right person to lead Chattanooga to the next century.
Yeah, I did a presentation to the chamber a couple of days ago, and Chancellor Bruce was there. And I think, and I do want to dispel some myths about. Look, UTC, or UT Chattanooga, my alma mater, they're plugged into our business community. We're doing research there. We're continuing to invest in the university. A lot of people have said, or some people have said, well, we don't have a research-focused university in our town, and that kind of hurts us. But I think the UT system is investing heavily in UT Chattanooga.
Yeah, we are. And one of the things that sometimes a misnomer or misunderstood is the UT system. Me personally, I don't have money. Nobody gives me money to allocate out. Universities earn their money by getting tuition from students that they recruit. They get money for research grants or research that they're doing. And that's up to them to create the proposal. Usually it's to the federal government to get grants. They earn funds from the performance funding formula, as we've talked about, and they earn money from alumni that give them donations. That's their four sources of income. So there's not another separate pot of money that now I would take it if you want to give it to me, but the General Assembly doesn't give me a bunch of money to personally allocate out to who I like and don't like. So UT Chattanooga has used the resources, I think, very wisely. They'll soon be at what's called an R2 university. They're moving up. They've tripled their research expenditures in just the last 5 years. So they're making a lot of progress. So I'm really proud of what they're doing on the research side. In addition, they're growing by leaps and bounds. This year was another 2.6% increase over 12,000 students, most students they ever have had. And their goal, Lori's goal, Chancellor Bruce's goal, is to have 15,000 students by the year 2030. So lots of growth planned, and the infrastructure shows it. We've got almost $700 million worth of construction that will be started or completed between 2025 and 2030. If anybody goes on the campus, it's
Right.
It's visible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as an alum and who has a number of family members who have been alumni, that are alumni, yeah, we see the transformation of the campus. It's really amazing.
Can I just, sorry.
Yeah.
But, if not for you and your leadership in the General Assembly, none of that would have been funded. And I know you've been at each one of our groundbreakings, and we always get to say thank you at those. But I want to say here on your podcast, thank you again for making the contributions you've had to UT Chattanooga would not be as successful if it hadn't been for your support and advocacy. So
well, you're very kind, but we both owe the taxpayers of the state of Tennessee a debt of gratitude, because they're the ones who actually do all this stuff for us, and it is an honor to be able to deal with their resources, and hopefully when they look at the way we spend our money, particularly in higher education, they're like, yeah, those are good spends. So, but thank you, I appreciate that. It's really kind of you. Okay, now. Tennessee has decided we're really going to invest in the nuclear side, which means Oak Ridge has become a real center point. For people who don't know, Oak Ridge is one of our national laboratories, one of the federal national laboratories. Huge amounts of money being poured into it recently. Yep. Huge amount of money being poured in. The state of Tennessee has poured a lot of resources into it. What's the relationship between UT and Knoxville and Oak Ridge National Lab, or does the relationship extend beyond just the Knoxville campus?
Oh, it absolutely extends beyond the Knoxville campus. So first off, as I think I started off earlier saying, UT manages the lab, and I'm the chairman of the lab. So the current director I helped pick with, along with the rest of my board. So I'm in charge of hiring the leader, approving their strategy, supporting them. But my most important role is making sure that we're working together with them in a very collaborative way. And we are more integrated and a better partner than we've ever been. And I know that because everybody tells me. I've been around for 7 years in this role. I've had people that have been in the industry or working with either UT or the lab for 30 years. And to the person, they say, we have never been more aligned and closer with Oak Ridge National Labs than ever before. So the partnership is really, really important. We work together on. We could spend a whole show just talking about all the partnerships. So I'll just stop with that. We've got tons of partnerships with them. Also, it's a partnership with the entire UT system. The Health Science Center is doing research with the supercomputer to diagnose why people get addicted to opioids. UT Chattanooga is doing lots of work with the Oak Ridge National Labs around quantum. And Chancellor Bruce is now a member of the board of Oak Ridge National Labs, the first chancellor of UT Chattanooga that is now a director of the Oak Ridge National Labs, and she's already contributing.
Well, I think people often confuse your role as being, he's in Knoxville. So, matter of fact, there was a time, and you may have proposed this, that we thought about moving the office to Nashville just to kind of.
That would not have been mine. So I did move it from the UT Knoxville campus to downtown Knoxville, so there is some separation. I think that was a good thing, but still the center of gravity is in East Tennessee. In Knoxville, I'm an hour and a half drive to Chattanooga. I'm a 30-minute drive to Oak Ridge National Labs. The Institute of Public Services is based in Knoxville. So, but I do have to travel all the time.
Yeah.
So I say I may be based in Knoxville, but I'm not actually in Knoxville. But probably usually on an average week, just for the reference, I'm in Knoxville 1 day a week. So this week, Chattanooga today. Yesterday was Martin. Monday, Tuesday in Dallas for a conference. My only time in Knoxville was a half a day, and on Wednesday to attend, ironically, a conference on nuclear energy and how UT was partnering. I was on a stage with Stephen Stryfer, the director of Oak Ridge National Labs, and Don Mall, the CEO of TVA, and we're on the stage talking about how we all work together.
So we've talked about the National Lab and UT's relationship to the National Lab. We've got chancellors sitting on the board of directors. You're the president of the National Lab now. But for the listeners, what's real world kind of thing that comes out of the national lab that they would recognize?
Well, the lab's about a $3 billion organization with 6,500 of the smartest engineers and scientists in the world. It's broken up into 8 directorates. One is their computing directorate. They have the world's fastest supercomputer. We just got funding to be able to create yet the next fastest supercomputer. What does that mean to the average person? We're using AI running on this computer to come up with new diagnoses around cancer, cures for cancer, and cures for kidney disease. Another directorate is around radiopharmaceuticals. This was something I didn't know until I got this job, but there are 180 different radioactive isotopes that you need to treat cancer, and they're only available from a production facility within the Oak Ridge National Labs. If the lab goes down, lots of people are going to be able to be treated for cancer. That's our only source of these isotopes is the national lab. So it plays a critical role in saving people's lives today and providing the research for the future.
So you may not remember this, but about a year ago, you and I had a really good, passionate conversation about the value of higher education.
That was the one that you were wrong about. I remember that one. I'm teasing.
And no, it's good. And obviously anybody watching this can see your passion around higher education. I assume, whatever you're doing, you have that level of passion and energy about it. And I made the proposition that in America, and I was talking more nationally, but I guess would apply to Tennessee as well, that people have begun to question the value. Now, we've talked about the cost and how Tennessee is actually a really good place to get higher ed. I'm not that at all. But people are going to question the value of higher education in terms of what it does for them long-term in life. And we've talked about how what people graduate with, their degree, may have no bearing on what they end up doing in life. You're kind of an example of that. And you pushed back really hard, which I really appreciated. And I want to just briefly kind of touch on that again, because I think the reason I asked you earlier about what perceptions you may have changed on higher ed as you've gotten into it, I think that your commitment, your view of higher education and its value, it just keeps increasing and increasing as you have different experiences in your role as it. And so you made a really passionate argument with me about that. But just to give you an opportunity, do you feel like that there is a general sense that higher education needs to do a better job proving its value to the students that attend?
And I think it was one of those things that I think we were in violent agreement. I think
it was a great conversation.
I remember truthfully, I can't remember the details. I just remember
that hurts a little bit, but that's okay.
We were disagreeing, but at the end of the day, I don't think we really did. Everything that you just said, I agree with 100%. That we have a perception issue, and we also have, and we had this conversation with these university presidents in Dallas for those last 2 days, that there's a lot of it that is on us. We need to do a better job of making sure that students understand the value of each degree that they get, and it makes a difference on what degree that you get. So we got to make sure that we're making sure that we provide that value. We need to do a better job of explaining our case to the public and to government officials. Just assuming that people understand how great we are isn't going to work. We've got to actually go work and improve that. And then we also just got to do a better job. We got to do a better job of keeping costs down. We got to do a better job of graduating students on time, and make sure that we're advising them in the right courses to take. So some of the things that people are frustrated with about higher education is deserved, but then there's some of it that's just I have a whole speech around myth busting about we're raising tuition at a higher rate or faster rate than inflation. Not true, but that's what people believe, that everybody's going to graduate with a couple $100,000 in debt, at least not Tennessee. So there's some things that we need to do a better job of communicating that aren't true, but then at the same time, we need to come up with ways to be more efficient.
As we close, I think one of the things I wanted to make sure people heard was, and I want you to comment on, is one, we're in a really good spot when it comes to both the quality and the cost of higher education in Tennessee. And I would say that's true for all of our public institutions, not just the UT system schools. I know some struggle more than others, but everybody's kind of trying to achieve the same. But years ago, when I was first elected again, and Bredesen was the governor, we were having a conversation about Tennessee, our particularly our land grant university, about where it ranks amongst the other universities you know. And every year I get calls from a parent here or there whose child went to an elite school educationally and did not get into the University of Tennessee at Knoxville campus. And they question that. And I always come back and say, well, did they apply at Virginia? Did they get in Virginia? Did they apply at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill? Did they get in there? Did they get in the University of Michigan? And now that you have been at this job for 7 years and you're interfacing with all of these college presidents, Tennessee continues to move up in the rankings as terms of the quality of education. I want to give you a chance to talk about the quality of education that students get, not just at the University of Tennessee, although that is our flagship school, but really at all of the schools that we're.
I think you'll find across our campuses, if they come to our campuses, they're going to get a great educational experience at a really good value, and they're going to graduate. We've got teams that are dedicated to our students at every one of our campuses, making sure that's successful. It's one thing to go to college, it's another to graduate. We're laser focused on making sure our students graduate in degrees that will make an impact. And I want to maybe qualify that, because I know there's some conversation around return on investment. What degrees should you incentivize that will make sure the students make the most money over a certain period of time? But the problem with that is there are certain fields like social work, like elementary school education, teachers, probably aren't the great ROI from a financial point of view, but from a social impact point of view, they are. One of our jobs is to make sure that we're transparent, and when students are making their choices, they're making an educated choice. I wouldn't want someone to choose to be an elementary school teacher thinking they're going to be rich. But that's maybe, as long as they understand that this is a chance to make a difference in the world, then that's a really great choice to make. But the University of Tennessee is thriving. All of our campuses are booming. UT Knoxville had over 67,000 students apply for 7,100 spots. All of our campuses are seeing similar kind of growth, and we're excited about continuing to give more opportunity for more students and produce more talent for our employers across the state.
But the university, particularly the Knoxville campus, it does align well with our push in K-12 education to really raise our standards, demand more of our teachers, demand more of our students, and as a result of that, the students that are coming to UT Knoxville and other campuses, but particularly UT Knoxville, I mean, their ACT scores just continue to get higher. You are starting to, in the past 7 to 10 years, we are now keeping our best and brightest, more and more of our best and brightest in Tennessee. We're now keeping them here because we are offering them a level of education as well as a cost incentive to stay in the state.
I'm going to do you and I a favor and make a comment that is really important to share. So we are a meritocracy, and for students to get into the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, or any of our campuses, it's going to be based on the work they put in before they came. It's going to be based on their ACT, based on their GPA, based on other things that they've accomplished. Too often in many schools around the country, it's about who you know, what your family lineage is, how much you're worth. And I get calls all the time. You'll get calls because we'll do this podcast. Everybody in Tennessee will see it, and they say, "Bo's a friend of Randy. Bo can just call Randy up and get my kid in." It won't work. They can't call you. They shouldn't call me. They got to earn it on their own right. Because I feel strongly, and it's part of our philosophy at the University of Tennessee, that it would be terrible for us to tell a kid that worked really hard, that deserved the opportunity to go to UT Knoxville or whatever a campus, to say, "Sorry, this other kid's parents are richer than yours, so they're going to get that spot." We just can't do that. It's tough though, because you get a lot of people that you're good friends with, or somebody says, "Hey, this guy could donate like $20 million to your campus." We just can't do it. So.
Well, let me on that point, and then now I'm going to say, and to close us out, I'm going to tell the listeners a story. This will be familiar to you because you've done it twice for me. Twice. I've had parents come up to me whose their students were at other universities or preparing to go to other universities. And I've sort of made a pitch for the UT system, a UT school. And their students were, from a merit perspective, were incredible students. I mean, perfect scores on ACTs, president's scholarships to other schools, et cetera. And I have called you on them and said, "Hey, I met this family and they're interested. Would you mind given that. Of course, I always tell myself, I'm going to have Randy Boy give you a call because you'd be a good student at the University of Tennessee based on your qualities. And you've called them, and it shocks them.
And I think we're 2 for 2.
We are 2 for 2,
so
and they're both really good. And the first one has graduated and is doing. His mother works when I'm not playing the Senate role where I work, and I check on him all the time. He's doing amazingly well. He went to a Northeast. He started up at one of those elite schools up in the Northeast, and came back to UT and had an amazing graduated with an engineering degree, but had an amazing experience and is doing really big things in his life now. And then the other is looking at coming to the UT, and he's apparently just a fantastic student with all the earned his way in. But it is important that we let the best of the best know that we can give you everything you need at the best cost, best value right here in Tennessee. And I think you're doing a really good job selling that because I think it's important.
I appreciate you giving me this opportunity today to continue to sell that because we've got a few ABCs here, always be closing during this podcast. And I also, before we close, just want to say thank you again for all the support for higher education in general, education in the state of Tennessee. What the listeners might not know is that you're passionate about education. And I don't have a conversation with you that's not front and center in everything you do. So thank you.
Great. Well, this has been Tennessee State Senator Bo Watson. If you enjoyed today's podcast, follow, subscribe, or like anywhere that you get your favorite podcast. As a matter of fact, make this one of your favorite podcasts. And if you'd like to comment on today's show, you can find me at bofortn.com. That's BOFORTN.com.